Welcome back to my learning tutorial of Big Data, the world of big value. In this tutorial, we are learning about Big Data ecosystem and Big Data terminologies. So in the today video, we are going to discuss about how SQL come into the Big Data scenario. So before proceeding, like in our mind, we always getting some question regarding the beginning of Big Data series. So the first question is like that, does the relational database, that is MySQL and SQL, have no space in the story of big data, or does relational database is no longer relevant as big data is evolving, or like is relational database not capable of handle big data, or questions like that. It's true that one no longer has to learn about relational database if big data is the final destination. So this type of the question, like, well, every single time when we hear that one person want to learn about big data and is not longer interested in learning about relational database, I find it is like bit far stretched, right? It's like awkward. So I'm not here to have some ambiguous answer of it depends like that. I am personally very clear that one who is aspiring to learn about big data or to become big data scientist or big data expert, they should learn about relational database. And it is, according to me, it is like first step of that. Okay, so first of all, we have to know that what is SQL. So SQL is known as a structured query language, and SQL emerged in the late of 1970 as a standard data access method. At that time, before the SQL, we are storing the value into the form of data file or in the straight file, the flat file, which is not that much relevant for data retrieval and data storage system. So in the time of 1970, RDBMS is invented, and today's time data is going fast, which is quite bit tedious job for SQL, but not that. Okay, so we can say that this is the time that in the case of big data, NoSQL movement started. The reason for the NoSQL movement in the recent time was become one of the two important advantages of the NoSQL database, that the first is performance and the second is flexible schema. So in my personal experiences, I have found that when I use NoSQL such as Cassandra and MongoDB, I have found both of the above listed advantages when I use NoSQL database. So there are instances when I found that the relational database too much restrictive when my data is unstructured, as well as they have in the data type which my relational database does not support. So it is like the same case when I found that NoSQL solution performing much better than relational database, and I must say that I am a big fan of NoSQL solutions because right now I'm working on that, and it's performing really very good in the recent time. But I have also been occasional that situation where relational database is still perfect fit even through the database which is growing in cases as well as have all the symptoms of the big data. So it depends like that on the situation, on the use case, that in the particular use case we have to use SQL or RDBMS, or in the particular use case we have to use NoSQL. So it depends upon the use case on, and it depends upon the which type of scenario we are going to work on. So we have to understand that. So what are the situations in relational database performing and the outperforming? So we can understand in a simple example, like for ad hoc reporting is one of the most common scenario where NoSQL does not have optimal solution. For example, reporting query often needs to be aggregate based on the columns which are not indexed as well as built. Will the reporting is running, right? Will the report condition is running in this kind, and in this scenario, if we use NoSQL database such as document storage system and distributed key system, means MongoDB or Cassandra database often doesn't perform very well because they are best suited, means MongoDB and Cassandra is best suited for fight with big data in the condition of just for storage and the performance, but not to do the aggregate function and the mathematical function on the particular columns. Okay, so I have often found it is much easier to work with relational database in the case of ad hoc query. So SQL is the most popular computer language of all the time. I have been using it for like more than 3 years, and I feel that I will be using it for a long time in the future. Even right now I'm working on Cassandra, but I'm also in the other hand I'm still working on SQL and about to learn new things. So there are plenty of the tools, connectors, and the awareness and the UI of the SQL language in the industry right now, and pretty much every programming language has written drivers for the SQL language, and most of the developers have learned this language during the school and college time. And we can say, like, in many cases writing query based on SQL is much easier than writing query in NoSQL supported language. Suppose in the future we will see that how to do select query from the SQL is pretty much easier in the comparing to select query from Cassandra or select query from MongoDB. So it is like a very handy sometime, and in the most cases, like SQL is so handy in the compare with NoSQL. So I believe this is the current situation, but in the future, this situation can be reversed when NoSQL query language are equally popular. right now, like no any particular UI interface, like SQL is having UI interface to just to so easy to create database and to insert data into that. But in the NoSQL condition, particularly right now, there are no any particular UI which helps the database developer of NoSQL to do creation of the table and inserting of the data. Even in the Cassandra, data modeling is the one of the tedious job to understand the data and to start to model according to the NoSQL architecture. So it is like so confusing and so difficult to understand the Cassandra data modeling. But I'm not telling that it is so difficult that we can't, but we can. But it is completely different from SQL condition. So we have to understand that at what place we have to use SQL, and at the what place we have to use Cassandra or the NoSQL database. So this is the first big breakthrough to understand that how SQL is working, and how NoSQL is working. Okay, so the first thing we have to concentrate is like ACID property, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So in the NoSQL condition, it is not offering. In NoSQL, it is not all the NoSQL solutions offer ACID compliant language. So there are always a solution. For example, banking transaction and e-commerce shopping carts, etc., where there is no ACID, the operation can be invalid, as well as database integrity can be at risk. Even though the data volume intended to qualify as a big data, there are always operations in the application which absolutely needs ACID compliance mature language. So like some places, in the case of transaction in the e-commerce websites, we can't use much relevantly NoSQL database there, because at that time we need that ACID compliance situations, and we know very well that SQL is the best suited for ACID compliance. We can understand that the mixed bag condition is like I often argument and with my other colleagues, and that the big data solution media still sites nowadays have moved away from their relational database. Actually, this is not entirely true. While researching about the big data and relational database, I found that many of the popular social media sites, such as site as use a big data solution along with relational database, many are using relational database to deliver the result to the end user on the runtime, and the many still uses relational database as their major back. So we can understand by understanding few example, like Facebook is using MySQL to display the timeline, and Twitter is using MySQL. Even Tumblr is using standard MySQL, and Wikipedia is using MySQL for the data storage. So like in the many use cases, they are using intermediately NoSQL into the data storage, but in the so many cases still MySQL is still using. So in the concise way, in the summary, in the summarize, that we can understand that I strongly believe that RDBMS is like a basic thing. We have to, everyone have to love it, and everybody has it, right? And NoSQL and other solutions are like another second hand condition. There is a huge base which we love them and want them, but not like every other condition we have to utilize it and start to implement completely NoSQL database into any condition of the website, because it's support to handle big data, but it's not support to do aggregate function. So we have to understand it very clearly, that where we have to do all the aggregate condition and where we have to do the normal storage sections. Okay, so it is extremely important to accept that relational database as one of the key component of the big data instead of treating it as a substandard technology. So I hope you understood clearly that how SQL is coming into the big picture and how it is different from the SQL and the NoSQL. In the next video and in the coming video, I have one another video in which we are going to discuss, and we are going to completely participate, and we are going to discuss separately that what is the means how SQL and NoSQLs are different into the this scenario. So I hope you will watch that video also. In the next video, we will discuss about NoSQL, and we will discuss a little bit about NoSQL in the more details. Till that, if you didn't subscribe my channel, so please subscribe it and comment down if you're having any conditions or any confusion.